I'm not. Now it probably would have fit one of your guys. It's like it went from a 4X to like maybe a 2.
Mm-hmm. Probably a crop top on Wednesdays. It'd work.
All right, everybody. I want to welcome you into today's stream. Whoa, I got audio. Okay, sorry about that. Speakers went on. All right, everybody. Welcome into tonight's stream. We're doing a coaches roundtable on the QB prospects of the 2024 NFL Draft. Joining me from left to right on the screen is SJ Line Coach. Next to me is Drew Brusso. Oh, Coach Brusso. And then Tyler Gutwine. And so they're going to go ahead and go through if you guys want to go ahead and introduce yourself real quick, and then we'll get right into what's happening. So if you want to start us off, SJ Line Coach, go ahead.
All right. My name is Tad Barton. I've been coaching for about 30 years. No, I'm not 30, 20. But it seems like 30 sometimes. Mostly small schools. I've coached both sides of the ball. But now in the promised land of the offensive line. So
offensive line is a skill position. Yes. Coach Bruce, so if you want to go ahead.
Perfect. Yeah, I mean, offensive line is probably the most important skill position, right? Drew Brusso here, head football coach at a high school up in Wisconsin. Been a coach for almost a decade now, even though I look like I'm 12. I understand that. Been at the JUCO level, the Division III level, and now been at the high school level for the last, this will be 6 years now. So, but yeah, happy to sit down and maybe shed some light on some of these draft prospects tonight.
Yeah. He's our only defensive guy, by the way, on this panel right here, guys. Primarily defensive. So he's going to see things a little bit different than the offensive guys will. So it's good to have someone in who's coached on the defensive side to give us an idea. And then on the end is Tyler. Tyler, our ghost. It's just because of the way the light is on him, unfortunately, on where he's at. Yes. So Tyler, go ahead if you want to introduce yourself.
Yeah, so I'm Tyler Gutwine, offensive line coach for the high school that Drew coaches as the head coach. So know him very well. Heading into my 3rd year of coaching, and part of it's learning more, and part of it is also giving my take of what these quarterbacks got. Also, yes, offensive line is for sure a skill position. I think we can all agree here.
Yes. If you ever say anything bad about the offensive line, you will be banned in this chat, just so you're aware. It'll be like insta-ban. It'll be like, oh, sorry about that. So, and as for myself, you guys know me as Big N. My first name is Nate, and I used to coach football. I'm the only one currently that's not a coach of the 4 of us. I used to coach football. I spent 9 years as a coach, 5 at the high school level, 4 at the collegiate level, 2 years at a junior college in Utah by the name of Snow College, and then 2 years at Division III out in Virginia. I don't really talk about that school as much because there were some things that happened, but regardless, we're all here, and we're here to talk about the 2024 draft, and we're going to talk about the QB prospects. So I've asked these 3 gentlemen to come on. We've talked in the background. Tyler, SJ Line Coach, and Coach Brusso have all been in the chat before where we've been watching the game film of the various quarterbacks, the 4 of them. So I wanted to go ahead and invite them on with their own perspective. So I'm going to go ahead and start us all off. I've asked them to prepare something about where they would recruit these quarterbacks and why, and rank them. Some of them may go into more, but I just wanted to focus on the 4 main ones that everybody's been talking about for these various reasons. So I'll go ahead and start us out. And so that's why you have up there on the screen. I thought it'd be nice to just do like a movie theater, as you can see us. And then in the background are the 4 quarterbacks up on the screen here on YouTube. And I'm just going to start us off with the fact that for me, if I was to rank this top 4 quarterbacks, and you guys can leave your thoughts as I go along with this, and then I'll ask you guys to do your own rankings and as to why. The number 4 quarterback for me is probably JJ McCarthy. And honestly, I don't know that he's a top 10 pick. And the reasons are for this. Having watched the film, I thought he played pretty well against Alabama, but there are some accuracy issues for me that exist. And then I don't think his arm is as strong as the others. I don't know what you guys think, But having watched the Minnesota film, there were a couple times where passes were underthrown where they were deep balls down the field. One, his receiver made a hell of a catch for him, but it was so underthrown that it should have been knocked down. And then another one, he hit the backside of the defensive back. He just couldn't get it as far. And so when you compare him to like Drake Maye or Jayden Daniels or Caleb Williams, he's got some accuracy issues, and then the arm strength combined, I would not have him be in my top 10. Maybe later half of the first round. It's almost like a Will Levis kind of situation in that sense, right? Like there's some things good that he's doing, but I just feel he did get better throughout the season, but you can see with Alabama sometimes he doesn't know how to kind of float the ball over the top of a defender. He'll just rip it in there. Those are some things, but because of the accuracy, and then I don't know that the arms is strong. That's why he's my fourth of the four that are up there on the screen. My number 3 is Drake Maye. This past season, Drake Maye's receivers were not very good. When we watched the film against Clemson, I didn't think his receivers were able to get a lot of separation. It was wild to me that a team like that could play one high safety the whole game, basically man-free, and cover his receivers so well that his receivers couldn't get open. So there's that aspect of it. But because he has a stronger arm and he can get the ball downfield, that's why I'm putting him ahead of JJ McCarthy. If I was to be honest, there's a lot. I know that Joel Klatt has been like ripping people who are quote unquote being nitpicky about the feet, but the feet are awful. And the feet are what's caused some of his problems. I mean, we watched the film of Notre Dame and he's dirting the ball to a back swinging out of the backfield. It's not like he misses. It's in the dirt. There was a 2-point conversion attempt. His feet are pointed to the side and he overthrows a guy who's like 5 yards from him. He has a strong arm, so that's the only reason I'm putting him above McCarthy is, hey, if he's got this arm strength, he has this chance that becomes something, but his drifting in the pocket is a big concern, and you've got 3 O-line guys who've worked with the offensive line. That would be really annoying, you know. You're blocking out, and then all of a sudden your quarterback's drifting into your block. That's going to cause a lot of problems for your offensive line, and I think people don't understand that is like that causes pressure. And we saw that even against Clemson, is sometimes he created his own pressure, and whereas if he just drops straight back and he doesn't do that, he's got like an extra second to then throw the ball because his receiver is coming open at that point. And then our top 2, right? Usually this is what's come down to. For me, the number 2 quarterback out of these 4 would then be Caleb Williams. And Caleb Williams, he's very good at the quick game. He has a strong arm. I mean, that throw against UCLA where he runs up in the pocket and throws it off his back foot, and it's a dot down the sideline to Brendan Rice, that's a hell of a throw. So I think he moves pretty well in the pocket, actually. I think that, you know, when he's stepping up, he does feel some pressure, and he's able to move around. But for me, the biggest problem with Caleb Williams and why I have him as number 2 is we saw sometimes where it was like the mid-range game. You know, we talk about it like basketball, where a receiver is coming open. It's not like NFL, like, oh, it's got to be thrown here and that's open. It is like, this is open in NFL, college, high school, Pop Warner, backyard football. This receiver's coming out of the break. He is wide ass open. Why aren't you throwing the ball? And we saw that as well against like Utah, where it was cover 2, got a guy going right down the middle of the field. You've got to fit it in between the backers or drop it right over the backer. Doesn't pull the trigger. So sometimes I think he doesn't see it as well. We saw where backers walked up, disguising coverage and then dropping back, and he's looking to throw the quick game, and it like throws him completely off. It's almost as though he's already decided pre-snap, I'm doing this quick pass, and then he doesn't know. So for me, the rhythm, move, you know, his stuff with taking the snap, dropping back, and being in rhythm with his drops is why I have him at number 2. And then Jayden Daniels, I have him as the number 1. I would pick him first if I was the Chicago Bears, and the reason is he plays within the rhythm, okay? And I know I'm talking, seems like I'm talking a lot, but when you see him drop, it's 1, 2, 3 with the drop, like if he's in shotgun, or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, he's under center, and then his feet are hitching. He's hitching up, and as he's hitching up, his eyes are going to his reads. So his reads are being tied into his feet, and if he's going to throw it. And that's why when he drops back and then he's done with his hitch steps, it's like he's been caught. Once you're done, now take off. So he doesn't just immediately look to run. He's dropping back, then stepping up in the pocket and ripping it. The biggest concern I would have for him is he needs to learn to slide a lot more because he's taking too many shots. He's not built to take the shots. And if he's in the NFL, he's going to be injured. But for me, just the way I would be coaching it as a coach, and if for my thing, and I think this is important for people to understand, is this is the way coaches will do it, is we're looking at someone that fits what we want to do, right? It doesn't necessarily mean like, okay, this kid's going to be awful. But for me, Jayden Daniels plays within a system. He progresses through it. He plays on rhythm. And for me, that's what I'm looking for. That's why he's number one. So number one, Jayden Daniels, 2, Caleb Williams, Drake Maye, JJ McCarthy of the 4. And so that's how I have it. Now, if you were to go to the 6, Bo Nix, Michael Penix, that might change. Again, I think Bo Nix is probably going to go to the Denver Broncos. I think they like him. He's very good at the short game, having watched him. And when I watch it, the thing having watched Bo Nix is sometimes he does panic a little bit at times when he get pressure on him, and he's not very good with the ball. But to me, he's very accurate, really smart kid, and I think he could be a really nice QB for the Denver Broncos. And I think the Seahawks are going to take Michael Penix. He's one of the most accurate QBs I've ever seen throw the ball. I'll be bluntly honest, guys. I've never seen a quarterback throw the ball just like Michael Penix. Deep ball, short ball. He is just amazing with the ball with his left hand and things like that. So I can see the Seahawks picking him up. His former OC is now there, and that's how I would rank him. So then if that changed with those two added on, I probably have JJ McCarthy still at the back of the first round because the other two I think have stronger arms. I'd still probably put Drake Maye at 5th, and then those two, Michael Penix and Bo Nix, actually ahead of him. Because Drake Maye is going to have to sit here. He is a project. You got to work on those feet. I mean, the drifting, that's all got to go. You got to work on that. So I don't know if that's going to happen. So that's how I look at it. Any thoughts from you guys on anything that I said? Go ahead and you guys can talk about it. And Dark Spect is in the chat, by the way, guys. So Dark Spect, I just mentioned why I wouldn't take Caleb Williams if I was Chicago, by the way. So, and he's a Chicago fan, so he's probably like, no. So we can talk about it afterwards after everybody's given their reasons for why they're ranking everybody. So, Tad, if you want to go ahead with your list, why? Just kind of like I just did, and then we can talk.
Okay, I'll try to make this quick and painless. So when I'm looking at a quarterback, I want a guy who's even keeled. He's not an emotional roller coaster first and foremost, and a guy that's going to be that leader. He's got to be that dude, right? And so that heavily influenced my decision more so than even some of their talent, because they're all very talented quarterbacks, right? So at number 4, I will go with JJ McCarthy. Just because we haven't really seen what he could do. Michigan didn't require it. He did what they required. He did what they asked, but they really never asked him or put the game to win a game or put a game in his hands. He's made great passes at times, and he's made kind of blunders at passes at times. The Ohio State game comes to mind. He should have threw the pick, right? Didn't early there on the first. But with JJ McCarthy, you get that guy. He doesn't ever really get flustered. At least it doesn't seem like he does. If he does, he handles it really well, stays calm, plays through things, and that's huge. So again, the only reason he's at 4 on my list is because he's never been asked to be the dude, and so we don't know if he can be the dude. Number 3, USC fans are going to hate me. I got Caleb Williams here, and it has nothing to do with his talent. Obviously, probably arguably the most talented prospect in our lifetime to come out of college, right? Huge arm. He can beat you with his legs. He can extend plays. Big Ian talked about the throw down the sideline deep as he stepped up in the pocket. He just extends stuff. I've referred to him as to my friends and stuff as what the dude's a magician because their USC's O line was awful. I'm sorry,
They
they
were
were
bad.
absolutely awful, and teams would get. He can only run away from defensive linemen and linebackers for so long, right? And I think that's what happened in a lot of those games. But the reason I have him at 3 and not higher comes back to that whole mental side of the game. He is an emotional roller coaster. He's up or down. If things are bad, he kind of seems to shrink instead of step up when they need him. Um, Also, he isolates. You've seen it on the sideline. He'll isolate when things are bad. He'll go off by himself, even walk over to the stands and talk to his parents, which is fine. It's fine to confide in your parents, right? I don't have a problem with it, but you do that at home, on the phone, something afterwards, after the game's over, not during the game or immediately following when all the cameras are there. And so that's why I have him at 3. It's the mental thing. Number 2, Drake Maye. Um, Huge arm, right? He does have bad habits, as Big Ian pointed out. But I think those bad habits come from him feeling like he has to do it all. The inconsistent play at wide receiver, uh, bad routes, drop passes. I think that he had the pressure kind of to get to him, so that's a little knock on him. But he's just kind of takes on more than he's capable of. But I think those are bad habits that are easily fixed with the right coaching. Again, maybe if he goes to a place where he can sit here, I don't think he will. I think he'll end up in Washington, and they'll expect him, to come in right away. But with the right quarterback coach and the right supporting cast, he's got great receivers, at least one great receiver at Washington and Terry McLaurin, right? He's got a weapon. He's got a safety net there. I think he'll be fine. But even when things were bad, I never saw him really. He reminds me a lot of Tim Duncan. There's not a lot of emotion there. He just kind of goes and does it, right? When things are good, he's here. When things are bad, he's here. It's none of this up and down stuff. And that takes me to number 1, which is Jayden Daniels. Again, the mental thing with Jayden Daniels, being a Utah fan, when he was at ASU, I saw him play on awful ASU teams, pressured, things going bad. He just stayed the same, right? And here's another guy that's going to be able to beat you with his legs or his arm. If I was again making the number 1 pick, that's who it would be. Either him or Michael Penix. But Penix's health history is why I think he's back. Because like Big Ian said, nobody passes the ball better than Michael Penix Jr. He's not just a slinger. He's not out there throwing. He's passing it. He puts his receivers in the best position to make plays. Bring up Joel Klatt. Joel Klatt says he makes 50-50 balls, 80-20 balls in favor of his receivers because he is that accurate and pinpoint. And not just the intermediate or short stuff. Downfield, he's throwing, 50-yard bombs, hitting guys in stride where only they can get to it.
Yeah.
So he would be my number. I'd almost put him in front of McCarthy, maybe in front of Caleb Williams, and then Bo Nix. Bo Nix he's the safest bet, but he's got to me the highest floor, but he's got the lowest ceiling.
Yeah.
Right. He is what he is. He's not going to really improve. You surround him with good supporting cast. He's going to do well, but he's not going to be the guy. He can at times be the guy that you can say, hey, we need you to go win this for us. But I don't think that's necessarily from what we've seen both in Auburn and in Oregon. We haven't really seen that side of Bo Nix. And so that's kind of how I place it.
Sure.
All right. Coach. Thanks, Dad. That's and you know what? We can talk about all these different aspects after this. What you guys think? Because some of us might change our mind just based on what one of us brings up as well. So, want to make sure that that's talked about. Drew, if you want to go ahead and go through your list real quick. Or not
Sure.
real quick, but just go through your list and explanations
Yeah.
as to why you would rank these QBs this way.
Sure. For me, I kind of have a little bit different ranking, like where guys kind of are. For me, like you said, I am the only defensive coach primarily is in this forum tonight. So I kind of go off of guys like we talked about. Guys, either you'd want your skill set to play, right? If you're an offensive guy, you want to have them bring them what you usually would have your skill set be tailored to, right? What your system and what the quarterback you want to come in. For me, it's the exact opposite. It's right. It's like who I don't want to say fear, but who would I have less sleep preparing for at times, right?
Gotcha.
And for me, I think due to mainly just the inexperience and not really knowing, like how SJ line coach said, what we did not see yet, I have McCarthy at number 4.
Okay.
But I do think if he's not asked to play right away, right, I think he has an ability to have a higher ceiling than maybe than some of the maybe 1 or 2 of the other quarterbacks in the top 4 list right here. I just think from a leadership standpoint, he says all the right things in the media, right? He seems like his teammates really gravitate around him. You know, you talked about the Ohio State game before. I know SC line coach stepped out here, but there was one throw, right? That could have been a pick, could have been a touchdown, but he fit it between 2 guys on a rope on the hash. Like that, you see that one throw, and NFL guys are just gonna be gravitated towards that. Like he's not afraid. He's for better or for worse, he's not afraid, to pull the trigger.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because you can coach the aggressiveness somewhat out of him. It's harder to, in my opinion, it's harder to push the aggressiveness onto a player, right? You can always reel back a little bit, but you can't always push forward, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So that's why I have McCarthy at 4, but that's right now. I think a progression or projection wise, a couple years down the road, I think he could be 3 or 2 on this list. But I think he's going to take a year or 2 if he's like, in a Minnesota or in like a Cleveland or in, some West Coast based system, not having him drop back, 7-step drops and just try to eat the ball down the field, right? That's probably not his best skill set. Get him out of the pocket, run boots, run inside outside zone, maybe run power because that's what Michigan did all the time, right? But have it to where the backers have to step up and he can get easier reads. I think that's where he's going to be better at, right? As compared to just a straight drop back, traditional, modern day spread quarterback. I don't think that's his best situation for him to be successful. Mm-hmm. Now I'm going to go against agreeing with you guys a little bit, but I have Jayden Daniels at 3. Ooh. And this is based on for projections wise for me. I think how we talked about, actually, lunch coach brought up that Bo Nix has kind of a high floor but a lower ceiling. I think that's kind of what Jayden Daniels has for me. I think, and this is just my.
What? I apologize, guys. My meeting just ended. My Zoom meeting just ended. Give me just a second here. I'll get them all back. I don't know why my meeting just ended. Hold on just a second. So let me redo this. Sorry about that, guys. Hold on. Let me invite them all. I don't know what happened there. My meeting just all dead. Oh, okay. Let me message. Hold on, Dark Spectre. I know, Dark Spectre. You were getting some good information out of it. I'm kind of embarrassed. Well, now we know. Okay. For some reason, it kicked everybody on Zoom. I don't know why. He probably is still talking. He doesn't know he's off. Oh. That's embarrassing. I'm sorry, guys. I don't know what happened.
Some LSU fan got pissed off.
Yeah, now we're switching all over. 49er George's in the chat.
Something like just the meeting ended.
Yeah, Tyler, I just sent you the message with the new chat. I don't know why the Zoom ended. I don't know why. I didn't do anything. So if you text,
Oh, sorry.
I'm still learning all this stuff with Zoom, but I didn't really do much Zoom. I didn't have to do much Zoom during the pandemic.
Yeah. I hardly use it at all at my work, but
Tyler, I
one
just
thing I
messaged.
don't think.
Sorry, Tyler, I messaged you in Discord the new link. If you could let Brusso know, I apologize. Totally embarrassing. George, it's good to see you in here.
I'm
George,
telling you, man, LSU fans got
they
pissed,
were like
and
pissed.
one of them
You mean,
said, "Get this guy off."
yeah, he just said that
Either
Jayden
that or
Daniels is not the number one. Get him off.
either
Get
that
him out of
or
here.
USC fans were mad at me and took them a while.
Yeah, hold on a second. George, are we ready for tomorrow? For the Niners? I hope the Niners pick up a receiver that's super fast. We need a top. We need a guy to take off the top, make a defense respect instead of sitting up there. Well, that's
It's a good
awful.
year. It's a great draft to do that. So
Yeah, there's a lot of receivers that I'm like, come on.
see, that's the thing. Like the Steelers need a receiver, right? But everyone wants them to bring in Ayuk, and I get it. He's awesome, but the price tag he comes with is going to screw us over this year's draft and cap room for the next 2 or 3 seasons, right? It's
Yeah.
like why would you give up that much when you have the talent you have in this wide receiver class, where you can honestly get a good producing receiver well into the third, maybe even early fourth rounds.
All right. Now he's going to have to come back in and be explaining everything again, why he doesn't have Jayden.
If we get bumped again when he brings up Jayden Daniels, we'll know for a fact that there's an LSU fan conspiring against this dream.
Well, hey, George, I like Ayuk, but what I would like is I'd like a receiver to kind of, make a team like the Kansas City Chiefs have to back up. Like, hey, you can't play this. We're going to line up and do that.
And George, I'm not going to argue that he isn't proven. He is proven. He's dang good.
Sorry
but
about
at the
that.
same time,
Dang, my take was that hot, huh?
yeah, man, you got hacked and bumped us all.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, no. If you want to go ahead and go back starting through, and then Tyler can join us. I sent him a message, and I'll just bring him in.
Sure. All right. But yeah, like I was saying before, I have McCarthy at number 4. I think projection-wise, I think he can be 2 or 3 on this list potentially. We talked about I think he's a very even keel leader, but I think he gets high with the highs, but he doesn't get low with the lows. So he's like a positive reinforcement leader, which I think is really good to see. A little bit inexperienced. Doesn't really have a lot of the game reps in terms of having to be relied upon. But, you talk about, for me, I think the one throw that for me, you talked about a coach before that kind of the Ohio State game kind of threw you away a little, kind of might turn people off. I think the one touchdown / interception throw, he fit the ball in there, right? And he's not gun shy. He'll put it in where he needs to, for me. And that, I think you'd rather have a guy be over aggressive than under aggressive.
Yeah.
Right. If you're scared to pull the trigger, means what happens when you have an NFL quality defense coming at you, right? Are you just going to eat it and take a sack, or are you going to try to make a play? I think put him in a West Coast system, get him outside the pocket. I think he could be, in 2 years, I think he can be a borderline, average, if not above average starting quarterback in the league. But he's going to need a lot of grooming, right? Mm-hmm. For me, again, how we talked about, hopefully this doesn't kick me out again. Right? I have Jayden Daniels at 3 for kind of the same reason you talked about with Bo Nix. Now, I'm not comparing them at all. Jayden Daniels is much higher on my list than Bo Nix. Mm-hmm. Okay. I think for me is that Jayden Daniels has not. Now, granted, this is not his fault, in my opinion. But he played with 2 elite level offensive tackles in Campbell and Emory Jones, and he played with an NFL receiving core with with Thomas, with Neighbors. There's probably another guy or two in there. Mason Taylor at tight end, right? A lot of very, very elite level skill position football players. And yes, the tackles are skills guys, right? At LSU. Now, he won. Now, I'll say this. His elite throwing ability to me is outside the numbers. That's what primarily they asked him to do, is win outside the numbers. Now, in the NFL, I don't know, especially with the elite level, because obviously the NFL is the elite of the elite, and from the college level to the pros, right? I'm not sure that kind of quality of play is going to translate as well to the NFL. That's just me, right? You can win outside the numbers in college, but I'm not sure if that is going to be the primary way that they can win in the NFL. I just don't see it. I just think the talent level, and you saw it this year. There it is. Paying the big bucks. All right, here we go. Right? No, it's nothing. But for me, I wanted to see more over the field, over the middle throws in that, that 8 to 20 yard range. I wanted to see more of that. Now, is that a part of him not having to throw in that spot because of the system? Potentially. Is that him not potentially seeing it down and not, not pulling the trigger down the field? I think it's more of the system than him, which is kind of maybe a little bit of an unfair, judgment on my part. But I think I'd rather deal with as a defensive guy, I'd rather deal with somebody who primarily throws outside the numbers and has been coached to throw outside the numbers all the time. Right. But that's just me, right? I think he's an elite level decision maker when he's given time. I think when you saw sometimes when he got a little bit of pressure, obviously like most quarterbacks, things didn't necessarily go as well. But he really didn't have a defense to really help him out either at LSU for the most part. So kind of the give and take with that. So hopefully that makes sense. I ramble on too much. Blame it on my head injury.
No problem. You got to catch up. You had to catch up because we had that whole situation with losing you on the Zoom call. So you're fine.
Right.
No problem.
All right. Maybe I get kicked out again. Who knows? Number 2, I do have Drake Maye. And this is the thing, like Coach said, I'm taking off the West Side Line coach quite a bit here. I think Drake Maye from a prototypical big arm, has the ability to make any throw on the field quarterback. He's somebody that kind of, as a defensive guy, if he gets the proper coaching and gets those coachable mistakes out of the way, I think he's going to be a really hard quarterback to defend for me. And also, he lost from 2022 to 2023. He lost Josh Downs, obviously, very good football player for the Colts now. He lost his quarterback coach, who obviously you can tell a lot of the things that he did better in 2022 compared to 2023. Some of the stuff he was allowed to get away with in North Carolina in 2023, you could tell, were not very good, right? Very bad habits that if you don't coach it, you allow it to happen, right? Now, I'm not throwing shade at it, but I'm also I'm giving my honest opinion. I think he should have been coached harder this past year than he was in 2000. Like he was in 2022. In 2023, he wasn't coached nearly as hard, in my opinion. Right?
Yeah.
And additionally, his offensive line play, you talk about USC's line play not being very good. North Carolina's wasn't much better. From my take on it. Right? Now, were the ACC defenses as good as the Pac-12 defenses? I don't necessarily think so overall, but that's my take. I think from a projection standpoint, I think he has, we talk about, there's 2 main things I'm going to talk about here. And I think so. I don't remember who put it best, but there's 2 primary things with quarterbacks. Are you an artist or are you a surgeon? Right. And we talked about, the next one for me, number 1 is Caleb Williams. But for Maye, I think if he gets his things controlled, the controllables, but I think a lot of those mistakes can be coached out of him. I think he has the ability to be really, really good at putting the ball anywhere you want him to ask. I think he's also can play in really any system that you give him. You want to put him in the spread. You want to put him in a West Coast. You want to put him potentially even in a little bit of QB run stuff, not too much, but he has the huge frame, right? We all, he's 6'4", 6'5". He's like 230 pounds. He can run around. He can hold his own. He protects himself for the most part, from what I've seen, right? And that leads me to number one for me is Caleb, on the sense that, once again, the things that he struggles with can be, I think, taught out of him, right? I think the leadership quality, being in an NFL locker room, some of those things that he was allowed to potentially do attitude-wise at USC, I don't think are going to be allowed in an NFL locker room. I think the vets of the rooms will pull him in, the coaches in the NFL. I don't think, for better or for worse, I think those things will kind of be negated at times. But he does things with the football and with the improvising skills nobody else we've really seen can do. Right? We always talk about, or at least for me, it's like you always look for traits that stand out, right? For me, Drake Maye's arm. For me, Caleb Williams' ability to make something out of nothing, especially with the lack of offensive line play that he had. Were his weapons like S tier, elite at USC? No, but they were good, right? Obviously, Brendan Rice, great pedigree, what have you. But I think, for me, I think Caleb Williams has the ability to be an elite talent, but I think it's going to take a little bit of a maturity standpoint and a little bit of sharpening and refining his skills and decision making. And I think his ceiling to me is probably the highest. I would say his ceiling is probably the highest here, but I think his floor could potentially be one of the lower ones as well. So hopefully that makes sense. Once again, I'm not an offensive guy per se. I just go off of kind of what I don't want to face as a defensive guy. And I see the traits that can potentially give a lot of defenses fits for 10 to 15 years down the road.
No, I get it. That I appreciate that. You're bringing in, sometimes, again, the offensive guys will be like, well, this is what we would like. It helps to talk to somebody on the defensive side so that they can explain what they can do. And so we're not going to have an issue with us losing, I think, the Zoom call any further, hopefully. So if we can take a little bit of time, you guys don't have to feel like you're rushed to talk about anything at all. Okay. So appreciate that so far. Tyler, your turn. How would you rank these quarterbacks? Why? What are some of the things that you've seen because you've been in here when I've watched the film, and obviously you're going to have your own opinion, but if you go ahead and then we'll discuss further after this.
Yeah, I think we can all be in agreement with number 4, right? JJ McCarthy. We haven't seen enough of him. Maybe translate best to a team that runs the West Coast, but I haven't seen enough film to honestly say this is going to be a guy that's going to be your franchise guy for years. He's kind of, to me, fits a little bit more of a bridge guy as it stands. Now, again, with great coaching, I believe Bruce was talking about that before we got disconnected. Great coaching. Yeah, he could become something special. We've seen it with guys in the later rounds that kind of ran the same offense. But to me, right now where he's at just doesn't feel like we've seen enough. And he need a situation where there's an established QB. He need to learn off of him. Sure, he's got this connection to Harbaugh. If he ends up going to LA and backs up Justin Herbert, maybe that's his best scenario because he already knows kind of the mentality of Harbaugh. But in terms of other teams, it's going to be very difficult for him, in my opinion. Number 3, going Drake Maye. Platform has some issues sometimes. Again, can't have an arm. I think you could see him sort of like my best comparison to his arm. You're looking more like a Josh Allen, kind of gunsling it down the field. I think that's something a lot of teams are going to get drawn to, especially seeing the success of how Allen's done in the league. But it can also be a pitfall for him in how he decides to play. And again, we talked about how his quarterback coach is gone this past season, lost Josh Downs. I mean, we're talking about a depleted team. I still think he can be a very good quarterback. Again, I think he's another guy that may need a year for him to properly blossom into what he can be. And he needs a really good quarterback coach to make sure he doesn't, get away with what he's currently being allowed to get away with. Number 2, and this is more kind of like what Tad was saying with the personality, it's Caleb Williams. I'd rather have a guy who is calm, collected all the time. I love the talent. Don't get me wrong. That talent is phenomenal. Arm talent. He moves up. I think he is probably I'm not going to say probably, he is the best of my lifetime that I've seen come out and get drafted in terms of coming out of college with that skill set. Again, if you guys don't know, I'm not very old, but that's just of my lifetime. I think that just the pure talent alone. However, we go back to personality issues. He isolates a lot. You know, we look back at the Utah games a couple years ago with his fingernails being painted. Um, you know, there's a lot there that teams are going to have to take on. And yes, veteran leadership can take care of some of that, but I just think that it would be a bit of a risk for some teams that, especially, I mean, you look at teams that have like their sort of mentality already. You know, a lot of them have established QBs, but look at the Patriots, right? They've kind of had their identity for years, right? That wouldn't be a team I think he would fit well into, and what the culture is up there. And then number one, Jayden Daniels. I mean, I think we've all kind of talked about a bit of a rhythm. He's a guy that I feel like he can step up in the pocket when he wants to, but also senses the pressure to a degree that not a lot of QBs in this class can. It, you look at times where he's setting his feet and he can make that throw from the pocket, but there are other times where he doesn't. He gets out of the pocket and he keeps his eyes up, or there's times where he keeps his eyes up because he's going to go run. So we're looking at a guy who has this massive skill set that really carves up defenses, because now you're putting a strain on the defense both in the air and on the ground. This guy can move a bit, right? That's something that I feel like, you know, Caleb can kind of rival him with a bit. But in terms of the actual accuracy, working through his progressions, you can see him step by step, and his emotions doesn't rise too high, doesn't drop too far. I think that's kind of my number one guy. If we're looking towards 5 and 6, pretty much in agreement with guys. Penix is the 5. You know, really good arm talent. I don't think any of us can disagree on that. You know, dropping balls in the bucket, and he's a lefty, and you don't usually see lefties sling it like him. This is a guy that I think, with the right system, with the right team, could be something special. But you have to think about the season-ending injuries as well. I know he said that, you know, he's bounced back from them, but he's had multiple season-ending injuries. Ultimately, and I hate that I'm putting him above an Oregon guy a little bit, because he went to Indiana, if you guys remember. But um, but yeah, Bo Nix, he's just been there for a while. High floor, low ceiling, and I think he'd probably be the best. He could beat out McCarthy. I just think McCarthy's ceiling is a little bit higher, just because of how young he is. You can coach him more, and those bad habits might be easier to coach out of McCarthy versus Bo.
Yeah. No. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. I appreciate your willingness to come back on with all the issue there of the Zoom ending. But I appreciate it. So anything that any of us have said that's kind of stood out to you that maybe you were looking at, that you thought, man, that's actually kind of a good point that I hadn't thought about with regards to a quarterback, or, and this is kind of like a free zone. Like, you guys, if you got something to say, this is kind of open to anybody to talk about. You don't have to, you know, we're not going in turns, is what I would say. And at this point, so yeah, for me, one of the things that I would like to point out, and this is something that there's a reason I watched specifically the games where Caleb struggled the most. I don't know how many people know this, but Caleb Williams never beat Utah while at USC. Caleb Williams lost to Washington and Oregon. And then Notre Dame gave him issues as well. And so one of the things I look at is, you know, those are where he's playing teams as well. Now, his offensive line, as we've all mentioned, was kind of bad. But I'm a little worried that some of the stuff he's doing, he's able to get away with because, I've watched the Arizona State film. I didn't watch it on stream with you guys, but I've watched the Arizona State film, and I'm like, man, he's running all over the place. That was a 1-win Arizona State team. So I don't know. So that's where I'm also kind of getting a little biased as well as I'm looking at the teams that he's had to play that were the toughest ones. And that's one of the things this past season for the USC fans to find out is the year that he won the Heisman, he didn't play the two of the better teams in the conference. He lost both times to Utah. One, he had a great game against Utah. Really, if you look at it, I think it was 5 touchdown passes, Tad, in the first half, and then they shut him down in the second half. When he's playing teams that are doing stuff that kind of pro teams do, I feel like that's where he gets his biggest struggles. Like UCLA this past season, their defensive coordinator had been in the NFL, and it seemed like he threw like 2 interceptions. There were times where, like I said, the receivers were open. So I don't know. It's hard because there's so many good things that he can do that it makes it hard for me. So I don't know what you guys think with regards to that, but yeah, I just wanted to bring that up because does it matter, or is it just because his offensive line was so bad and he had one of the worst defensive coordinators who apparently couldn't figure out how to stop toss against Washington? I'll leave it open to you guys to discuss amongst each other.
I just want to add to all the people watching, if I didn't say enough nice things about your guy, it's not that I hate them, because all these guys are amazingly talented. All of them have the potential to have very long careers in the NFL and to help their teams win volume.
Yeah.
I'm going to go back to talk a little bit about what Tyler talked about with the season-ending injuries for Penix. Right, he's had both knees reconstructed. If I don't have to worry about that, I think Penix is my number 1. That was enough to drop him to 4 or 5 in my rankings. That's how good Michael Penix Jr. is.
Okay.
So
that's interesting that it dropped that far because of the injuries. But I will say this now. I don't know if anybody has paid attention to it. I had heard that one of the things about Michael Penix is he's great at the long and the short, but some of the medium range passing he does struggle with. I don't know if anybody else has heard that. I need to go back and take a look. But I don't know because I didn't really notice it when I was watching him play while out west. I thought he was just some of the throws against some of those teams. I mean, I was like, how's that even going to be caught? How is that even to the receiver? So for me, I'll have to look at it. So I've heard that might be why some NFL teams are kind of like, I don't know, injuries. He's missing this part of the game. So I don't know. Do we feel like anybody has been kind of propped up, unfortunately, way too much that they shouldn't have been propped up, like Will Levis last year? Because we watched Will Levis. Remember, all of us watched Will Levis last year. We didn't do a video like this, but we were all kind of like, why is he being listed as a potential number 2 pick in the draft? I don't know if any of us walked away watching that film and thought that about the kid. Am I wrong in that, or from last year?
I don't think
got
there's been
scared that
anybody.
the Colts were going to take him.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anybody to that caliber of being kind of like built up or overrated this year. These quarterbacks are all, in my opinion, more talented than anybody that came out in the last 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
Yeah, I would go 1 through 6 would still be 1 through 6.
Gotcha.
Going back to 2021, or I guess 2022 draft. So.
Yeah. Okay. What do you got? Anybody else got anything that they'd like to bring up with regards to this discussion?
Well, you got something, or you good?
I got nothing off the top of my head. I think, everyone's kind of hit their points, and I can see where they're all coming from. I just think that, especially with the Caleb thing, that issue is I think it's gonna persist a little bit longer than some NFL GMs want to give credit for.
Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I kind of have the opposite approach, at least for me, with when it comes to him. It's because hypothetically, right? Most of us think he would probably go number 1 tomorrow night to Chicago, right? I think we're
Yes.
probably unanimous, right? Now, the one thing that I could see with, this is kind of branching off a little bit. If Caleb goes to Chicago, you got to remember, if you look at what happened last year, the last half of the year, who was the number 1 scoring defense in the NFL after like week 10 last year? It was the Bears. For better, and I mean, I'm a Packer fan, born and raised in this city. You watch that Bears defense, like they're young. They got better with the trade with Sweat. They paid him already, so he's happy. I think if Caleb goes there, if and when at this point, probably, I don't think he's going to have to ask to be Superman all the time. I really don't. He's got DJ Moore. Do they have to figure out the running back situation? Did they bring in Swift, right? They brought in DeAndre Swift, if memory serves me right. Right? They have Cole Kmet, have a safety blanket as a tight end. Do you kind of need a number 2 receiver potentially, right? Do you kind of need some other weapons? The offensive line, young but needs to improve, so they probably could address that too. I think going to Chicago, even though Chicago not notorious for having very good quarterbacks, right? Not in developing very many quarterbacks. Let's just be honest. Sid Luckman's the best.
They had Mitch Trubisky. They had Mitchell Trubisky. Remember, they traded up
he
for
was
Mitchell
a Pro
Trubisky.
Bowler.
Yeah.
He was a Pro Bowler there.
Contest.
Oh,
In that case, it was you're hurt, and you don't want to go. All right, let's make Trubisky a Pro Bowler.
But
let's be honest, the best quarterback ever to play for him was my man Jim McMahon, and he was average.
Right.
Like Mitchell Trubisky was such a reach. Like, remember when he got drafted? Everybody just looked around at each other like, "What? Who the hell is that guy?"
I remember the draft party.
And you bring up a good point, because here's the problem, right? This is also not a very usual number 1 draft pick team that's picking the draft, the number 1 pick, right? Usually it would be a team like the Carolina Panthers, but we have a team that won 7 games last year, being the first pick of this draft. So it's not like Caleb Williams is probably going to a team where you're like, hey, good luck. This is just like your USC experience. You're going to have to run around. Like I said, for me, it's can you correct, because he's so used to it. Remember, this is 3 years of him being in the same system with Lincoln. Is he able to really adjust his playing style to playing within some structure within the NFL? Right? I think a lot of people look at Patrick Mahomes running around. I think he's always playing out of structure, but he doesn't. He plays within structure, but then he goes out and makes the plays when he needs to. And if Caleb Williams can do that, then the Bears are going to be a freaking playoff team next year, causing a lot of problems, potentially, going to the NFC Championship game. So it's a very interesting situation, because we're looking at this, but this isn't a typical number 1 draft pick team where it's such a mess that they're trying to build out of a problem. So,
well, then they also have the 9th pick, right? They pick him at 9. So I mean, they're going to be able to get another weapon for him. The Swift addition is going to be the key, though. I think if they can get their running game going and protect him a little bit with that, and the maturation of the offensive line being young, if they can do that for him, and I kind of agree with Brusso in the sense that with the right veteran leadership, and I think they have it mostly on the defensive side of the ball, but if they can keep that kind of attitude and kind of prima donna persona that he has in check, just in check, because you don't want him to lose it all, right? You want him to have some swagger. But if they can do that, he could, the sky's the limit with his talent. So.
Yeah. So you guys think the Patriots are taking Maye at number 3? Or do you think he goes number 2?
I think the Commanders I think the Commanders are taking him at 2.
You think Drake May's going 2?
Yeah.
Then if he goes 2, do you think that the Patriots take Jayden Daniels, or does Jayden Daniels keep dropping?
Personally, I think I could see the Patriots, even moving back right there. Maybe try to stack another pick in the first or later round, later the part of the first. But if they stay there, it will be Jayden Daniels or Drake Maye, whoever doesn't go second.
Yeah. Okay. And then,
I
well,
think
go ahead. Sorry.
I think to me is that if Jayden Daniels goes number 2, I think, and this is my opinion based on kind of what I see from NFL coaches, I think if Jayden Daniels goes 2 to Washington, I think Denver trades up to number 3 with the Patriots. Because I think Sean Payton is done and sick of trying to, you can tell Sean Payton wants somebody who he can just mold himself, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't want
Got
somebody.
Zach Wilson.
Duh, right? He wants. I mean, he worked with Drew Brees for a long time. Drew Brees wasn't the biggest guy in the world, right? But I think Drake May's skill set combined with Sean Payton's offense, I think, is a match. It's a very good match. Just my opinion. I think Sean Payton sells a farm to go get Drake May at number 3.
Okay. That would be interesting because they pick at 12, right? The Broncos pick at 12. So they're going to that would be interesting if the Patriots did decide to trade back. That would be quite an interesting decision. I wonder. Then you would wonder who they have because they got to get a quarterback, don't they? The Patriots have nobody at quarterback. You got to get a quarterback,
right?
But
No,
McCarthy could fall to 12. If they traded back, they could get a McCarthy who I think might actually fit kind of that. Who knows what Mayo is it Mayo, the new head coach?
Yeah.
Or no, not Mayo. Rivers.
Yeah,
no, it is Mayo. He's who knows if he'll keep the same culture and systems that he played in there, or if he has his own idea of more stuff.
Yeah.
But I could see it JJ McCarthy, and he could slide to 12 if they did trade. But also I could see Denver staying pat and picking up Bo Nix at 12.
Yeah.
Because the rumors I've heard, the Sean Payton, the whole organization loves Bo Nix.
The question I have is if let's say that the Patriots did decide to go back, do the Vikings jump ahead of them to try and get JJ McCarthy? So that's the risk that the Patriots run. If it's very interesting because I guess the news today was that the Patriots hadn't gotten a real good offer yet that they were really considering. So I think that might be one of the things that's kind of the question mark is, are the Patriots willing to kind of trade out? And they've got someone that they think will probably be later in the draft that they can pick up that they really like, because that's such a risk at number 3 with this many quarterbacks that we're all saying, like, yeah, these are actually pretty good quarterbacks. We put them in this range. You may think, okay, this guy's going to fall into later in the first round, but another team could step up and pick him up. Right? Wasn't it like, I think Sean Payton wanted Mahomes, and the Chiefs jumped up and got him before he could get Patrick Mahomes. I think he wanted the guy. So,
yep.
That's the risk you run, especially when you're there. So I'm curious to see. I might do a stream tomorrow night if you guys are wanting to talk. We can just sit here and talk as the draft picks come in. But, yeah. What do you hope? So I'm going to ask you guys because I think we all root for a different NFL team. What are you hoping to see from your Green Bay Packers tomorrow, Coach Brousseau?
This is a little bit of a homer pick, but I think in the first round, I would like to see the Packers either address the interior offensive line with somebody such as Grant Barton. What's the kid's last name out of Duke? I can't remember. Barton, maybe?
Yeah,
Barton. I would like to see either address, but the Packers are not notorious for taking offensive linemen early. They're not known for taking offensive players in general early. So I think the Packers would look to the secondary or another pass rusher as well to switch with Hafley's 4-3 system. They're going to be very aggressive. They're going to be playing a lot of press man. I could see them potentially taking one of the corners on the board with some flexibility. I could see Cooper DeJean if he does fall, which I don't think he will. I think he's too good of a football player to drop to 25. But I would love it if he happened to come to Green Bay. Otherwise, I can see the Packers honestly trading up. They haven't traded up in 4 years, and go get such a like an athletic freak like a Kenyon Mitchell out of Toledo. If you like Terry and Arnold, he's not the athlete, but he's one of the most instinctive corners in the draft. Something such as that. I think safety's too early. I'd like to see him address the running back spot. Additionally, as a backup in like the mid rounds, I'd love to see Braylon Allen be in Green Bay, but the Packers never draft Badgers for the most part. So other than that, I'm just excited.
They don't like the in-state college kids. They're like, no, we don't want those guys. They're used to living up here. No. I think it's interesting. You've got Jordan Love, who, had a great season last year, great playoff run. Yeah, I'm curious to see what you go for with him because you've got the Bears who are potentially coming. Your window is kind of closing in the NFC North where you've been just. It feels like almost like the Packers for years have just been like, well, we're the dominant team, but now you've got the Lions, you've got the Bears coming. The crown is no longer kind of guaranteed just because you're the Packers. I agree. It would be nice to see the Packers kind of be aggressive here, like take some chances, be aggressive a little bit here. In that
they got 11
sense.
picks.
Yeah, I mean, geez.
They have the most picks in the draft, so I don't think they're going to take all of them. I think they're going to trade up sometime. It'd be cool if it was round 1 and go get the guy they want.
Yeah, I think they should. I think that would be a smart thing, like be somewhat aggressive to do that. So, SJ line coach, he's a Steelers fan. What would you like to see from the Steelers for this draft? Tomorrow night, round 1, what are you hoping that they don't do?
I'm hoping they don't pick Amarius Mims.
Pick who?
I'm hoping they don't pick Amarius Mims.
Okay.
He's appeared in 8 games, only started 6. He's one of those freakishly athletic and big tackles. But this is, in my opinion, it's a fairly tackle deep draft. I think they can get a solid tackle into the second or maybe even the early third round. I'd go all the way down to Christian Jones from Texas, who is projected third to maybe early fourth. And if they're worried about Dan Moore Jr., which a lot of people are, and I get it, he hasn't progressed like people thought. But being a line coach, my thoughts are if Broderick Jones was better than Dan Moore Jr., Broderick Jones would have been a left tackle. I think he'll be better. I think he'll win that job this year. But they're not going to put a guy who is not the best tackle they have over there on the left side for right-handed quarterback, unless they truly believe it, right? So, and I don't know. Everyone kind of bashes on Dan Moore Jr. Is he the answer? No, but he's not nearly as bad as people think. I did a little deep dive, and I checked. I crunched all the numbers, and this doesn't count pressures because I can't find anywhere where they track pressures. This lineman gave up so many pressures. I'm getting a little bit off base here, but the guy was successful. 99.285% of the pass sets he took, but not giving up a sack.
Yeah,
that's pretty good. So what I am hoping for, I'm hoping that we have an Oregon Duck selected number 1 who can anchor that line for the next 10, 15 years, and that's Jackson Powers Johnson. And a lot of people actually think that they're going to pick, if Mims is gone, they think they'll go with Barton because of his versatility. But Barton hasn't played interior O-line since his freshman year. He's been at left tackle the last 3 years. But JPJ, I think, is a guy that can play anywhere in the middle. He started games at both right and left guard, started all last season at center, and he's smart enough, big enough, and long enough, athletic enough to play right tackle if you really needed somebody in a pinch. And so I think he's kind of like, he's got a specialty. He is the best center in the draft, and it's not close. I know West Virginia fans will argue that Frazier's just as good. He's not. They'll argue that Van Pran from Georgia is good enough, which he is. But why not take a guy that's going to be, in my opinion, a perennial All-Pro and Pro Bowler who's going to anchor your line in the Steelers tradition of guys like Webster and Dawson, even Pouncey, even though he wasn't there a long time, uh, J, JPJ is that guy. So I'm hoping that's who they pick in the first, and I hope they pick up someone like Patrick Paul or something like that in the second. Now, with that said, I've done a lot of mocks, right? And mocks that are not always the most accurate. But in a lot of the mocks I've done, Olu Fashanu dropped all the way to 20. I think if you have somebody like Fashanu at 20, that's a no-brainer. You take it, right?
Mm-hmm.
You take him, you pick up Van Pran in the third or the fourth to play center because Frazier will be gone. I don't think that's going to happen, but that's the only person that I would take over Jackson Powers Johnson. Well, Thuaga, but he's not going to come close either. So.
Well, and speaking of athleticism, if people want to see that, there's a video I did about an Oregon screen, and the man is running with the tight end down the field, like leading the way. When you have an offensive lineman that can run basically the same speed as the skill guys, it opens up a lot of offensive opportunities, guys. Coach Musso talks about not what he doesn't want what defensive guys don't want to have happen. They hate athletic offensive linemen because that means that their guys have to take those dudes on. So, Tyler, what would you like to see happen tomorrow night? I mean, you can just be generic. You don't have to be like go as far in depth, but for the Colts, what would you like to kind of? No, it's fine. I don't know that I would be that I'm ready to go as in depth as you are. You can tell that Tad has really been thinking about this. He's like, I want
Jackson
guy.
Powers Johnson. That's it. I want him.
He's told me like multiple times. He's like, I want this center. And he's
a Utah kid, so I got that much better.
He's on Twitter. People are like making comments like, no, this is the guy. No doubt. This is the guy we want. So I'm just saying I'm probably not gonna go as in depth as you, but Tyler, go ahead. What would you like to see tomorrow night for the first round of the draft, or even throughout the draft? Like you're hoping that they can kind of address for their needs.
Well, as an offensive line coach, I feel obliged to say offensive line, but considering the situation in Indianapolis, don't think I should say that.
Mm-hmm.
The biggest, in my opinion, the biggest two needs for Indy are you need a new tight end that's going to be a better receiver in the pass game. You're running a system that relies more on that quick game. So you need a guy who can get those routes. And I think a guy is going to take a trade up, likely maybe look at Chicago as a trading partner because they have that extra pick in the first round. We could look at trading with them, possibly get Brock Bowers out of it. I think that would be the most ideal pick. Realistically, if Chicago doesn't want to trade down with Indy, would realistically see maybe a trade back, maybe with Kansas City, because Kansas City is looking for a receiver. So possibly trade back with them. And then the other need is defensive back, right? It's a depleted defensive back room. I know all the Colts fans were going crazy. Oh, we're going to get Snead. Did not happen whatsoever. So you could go back with Kansas City, and I'd say you're looking at Kool-Aid McKinstry, and you're looking at Cooper DeJean. Those would be the top two guys that would fit right now into what Indianapolis is trying to do. Now, do I trust Indianapolis to do it? Not entirely. Mm-hmm. It's kind of realistic with how it's been the last couple of years, but I think that would be their best play is to trade back with a team that's trying to jump forward for some wide receivers. It's such a deep wide receiver room or wide receiver draft that you're going to have guys who are going to be wanting, to jump a few guys, maybe try to get into the sweepstakes, and then you pick up picks for later on, then you start to address little holes in your room, maybe get another backup back for JT in the backfield, get a couple linebackers. You lost Shaq Leonard last year. Shaq Leonard wasn't really producing, so maybe try to address the linebacker room. But I think you have to look more at the DBs than you do with the linebackers in that defense right now.
Awesome. Well, for the 49ers, obviously we need an extra edge rusher. I know that a lot of people have us taking, or some people have us taking Chop Robinson out of Penn State. So there's two areas, but the area I would really like to focus on, and I know I've said it, and George, I don't know if he's still in the chat. I'd like a receiver that could take the top off just to be a threat downfield, so that teams like the Chiefs can't stack the box and kind of get us in those situations. But we got to get offensive line on the right side. In the Super Bowl, it was very apparent that the right side of the line had sometimes some issues in the Super Bowl. They were able to be masked from time to time, but if we can get an offensive tackle that can play on the right of opposite of Trent Williams, because we're not going to have him for much longer, and then start, for a year after that, maybe we can get one later in the rounds that can be a consistent starter. That would be great, because the window is closing as well for the 49ers. Like, we have all this talent, but the younger teams are coming, right? We've got Detroit that had us on the ropes for a little bit, took a great second half to beat them. You've got some teams that are coming up that we've got to prepare for. I think getting an edge rusher in the first or second round is imperative, along with offensive line. And then if we can find ourselves a wide receiver that can, all I'm wanting is a receiver that can threaten the defense. You want to run one safety and walk everybody up to stop the run game, he's going to burn you. That's all I want, is to make you have to back off just slightly. When I watched the Super Bowl game, you could see how many times the Chiefs are just walking up. They're like, beat us with McCarthy. There just has to be that. That's my personal opinion. I'm, of course, obviously biased as an offensive guy, but I just noticed that, especially in the playoffs, I want to beat those teams and let's dictate to them a little bit as well. Like, hey, we're gonna take off the top. We know you're gonna have to worry about the run, but we can take the top off of you as well and throw the ball downfield. And you've got Brock Purdy for 3 more years on a rookie contract. So we've got to definitely, like this year, have someone opposite of Bosa that can be young, that can get after it. Offensive line to play opposite Trent Williams. And then really for me, someone to take the top off of the defense. Those are my 3 wishes to see throughout the draft this weekend. If we do that, I'll be a happy camper. If we get Chop Robinson, not going to complain about it, right? And then we'll go from there. So it'll be interesting. I'm curious to see the first round, because we're talking. Everybody's kind of got this assumption about all these quarterbacks, and we could all be wrong. Where the NFL teams are like, "Nah, we need this. We're going to take this. We're going to take this." All right. I mean, that's always, and I'm going to be kind of blunt. That's always the crapshoot about the NFL draft. One of the hardest parts, and I don't know about you guys, is always evaluating quarterbacks, because one, we don't know what's being said to them in the quarterback room. Right? They may be getting taught something that we're not teaching, right? They're saying something, so I'm looking at it like, why is he throwing it there? Well, his coach told him, in this system, they're going to throw it this time. So the NFL draft's always an interesting time, because you're going to see it, and then you're going to have someone be like, this team won the NFL draft. We're not going to do that in this channel. We'll go watch the game film of them all through the first round picks, and we can all go through them and then talk about them as a group. But yeah, so that's what I'm just thinking. I'm glad that you guys could come on. I'm glad we could do this. I don't know if you guys want to talk about anything else. I'm down to talk about anything else. If you guys ever want to do a chalk talk, we now kind of know how to do this stuff, right? And if you guys don't know what a chalk talk
I'll take
is,
all 3 of you on.
yeah, Coach Beers was like, I will defeat all of you. If you guys don't know what a chalk talk is, basically I would put up a formation, and I'd say, draw a play. The offensive coaches draw a play. Defensive coaches would bring out we drop a formation. Defensive coaches would give the defensive formation they would use to line up to that offensive formation. And then it's kind of like, how would you attack the defensive alignment this way? what would you do as a defense to put pressure on an offense? And it kind of gives you an idea of what coaches are thinking and looking when they're looking at that stuff, because this is what coaches will do. Coaches will just sit around and talk about plays and be like, what do you think of this formation? And this is what we can do with it. And this is what we can do with it, right? We draw it in the dirt in the off season and then put it in the regular season, right? We don't do that. It's not like the water boy where we draw it up on the sidelines in the middle of the national championship and it's executed perfectly. But that's what a chalk talk is. We just sit down, we talk, and the coaches are like, this is what I want to do. And we go from there. And so Coach Brusso would then, or even offensive guys, if they want to throw their hands at defense, I would let them do it as well. Be like, this is what defense I want to run. So, again, I appreciate you guys. By the way, these three are the booster members and above that you have seen at the end of every video, right? They always get their names in the videos just like this. All members get early access to any videos besides the live streams at any time. If you wish to be a member of the channel, we have 4 options as well. The booster member and above gets your name at the end of every video. There's extra things as well that are that. But I want to thank you guys for being here. I appreciate 49er George and Dark Spectre for being here. And if anybody else has been in the chat just lurking, I appreciate you guys as well. I'm going to end the stream right here. You guys hold on a second. I want to talk to you afterwards. But we're going to go ahead and end the stream. Appreciate you guys. Hopefully this gave you some insight of what coaches are looking at. I thought it was very interesting, the different ways we looked at the quarterbacks. I was much more like, here's what I am with the style of their play. You know, SJ line coach was talking about, you know, what's their, what is, I can't even remember the word, their makeup, how they handle the pressure. Are they isolating themselves? Coach Brusso, he brought us, the way he looks at it is, you know, who do I not want to play against? That's who I'm going to rank a bit higher, things like that. It gives you guys some insight. And this is where, like, coaching staffs and scouting departments have been in the NFL. They're debating these things just like this. They're talking about, what are the strengths here? What are not the strengths? Why is this guy on our draft board? Why do we think we should draft him? These are the very things that happen. This is the kind of stuff that happens in recruiting at the collegiate level as well. Coaches will sit there and talk and be recruiting. And then off-season, high school coaches are like, should we move this player over here? Yeah, they can do this. We can't have anybody else doing this. Let's move them to this side of the ball. So hopefully we can do more of this. But, guys, I'm going to go ahead and end the stream. Thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next time. Like I said, these are the 3, again, Coach Brusso, SJ line coach, and Tyler Gutwine. They're the booster members and above, so that's why I want to personally shout them out in the video